In the mansion where silence reigned, a father lived trapped in the grief of his lost daughter. Until one rainy day, a hungry girl kneeling on the sidewalk crossed his path. Her features so familiar, reopened memories he thought he had buried. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. Robert Calloway's life had been measured in ticking clocks and empty rooms for exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. His Victorian mansion in the quiet, tree-lined suburbs of Concord, Massachusetts, once vibrant with laughter, had transformed into a museum of frozen memories. Each morning, he woke before his alarm, made his bed with military precision, and walked past his daughter's untouched bedroom door without allowing his gaze to linger. The house stood as a testament to his grief, a carefully preserved shrine where time had stopped the day Madison left this world. Her toys remained arranged in perfect rows on shelves he dusted daily. Her clothes hung in color-coordinated sections in her closet, protected by plastic covers. Her photographs smiled from every wall, their glass surfaces spotless, wiped clean each Sunday without fail. Robert was the caretaker of this memorial, a man who moved through spaces but never truly inhabited them. At 45, his once warm brown eyes had dulled, matching his prematurely graying hair. The prestigious Boston architectural firm where he worked as a senior partner had adapted to his transformation, assigning him projects that required minimal client interaction. His colleagues no longer invited him to happy hours or weekend gatherings. The isolation suited him. "Mr. Calloway, do you have the Westfield portfolio ready?" His assistant, Jenny, stood at his office door, her voice deliberately soft, as if speaking to someone convalescing. "On my desk," he replied without looking up from his computer screen, where he methodically reviewed blueprints. "The red folder." Jenny approached cautiously, retrieving the folder while studying her boss with concerned eyes. "The partners were wondering if you'd be joining the presentation tomorrow. I'll send my notes. Davidson can present." "But you're the lead architect on this project," she pressed gently. "The client specifically requested—" "Davidson will do fine." Robert cut her off, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "Anything else?" Jenny hesitated, then shook her head. As she turned to leave, she paused. "It's May 16th today." Robert's fingers froze over his keyboard. He didn't need the reminder. May 16th, the anniversary. 2 years since the accident that took Madison away forever. "I know what day it is," he said quietly. "Some of us were thinking of you, that's all." Jenny slipped away, closing the door softly behind her. When the office emptied that evening, Robert remained, working mechanically until the cleaning staff arrived. Only then did he gather his things, nodding silently to the familiar janitor who had stopped attempting conversation months ago. The drive home through Concord's historical streets was automatic, his hands steering while his mind retreated to its carefully constructed void. At home, he heated a frozen meal, ate without tasting it, and washed the single plate and fork immediately afterward. He checked each window and door, adjusted the thermostat to exactly 68 degrees, and climbed the stairs to the second floor. As he passed Madison's room, his nightly ritual began. Turn the doorknob, stand in the doorway, look but don't enter, close the door, continue to his own bedroom. That night, sleep eluded him more than usual. Tomorrow would be his annual pilgrimage to the cemetery, the one day he allowed himself to fully acknowledge his loss. He stared at the ceiling, counting the familiar cracks, until exhaustion finally claimed him. Morning arrived with a slate-gray sky threatening rain. Robert, dressed in the same dark blue suit he wore every May 16th, ate his customary toast and retrieved the car keys from their designated hook by the door. Before leaving, he visited the garden where he carefully cut 3 sunflowers, Madison's favorite, from the small patch he meticulously maintained year-round. The forecast had promised rain by noon, but the skies opened earlier, pelting his windshield as he navigated the familiar route to Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. The historical burial ground, with its famous Author's Ridge where Thoreau, Emerson, and Alcott rested, felt appropriately solemn under the darkening clouds. He had just turned onto Walden Street when a flash of movement caught his eye. Through the curtain of rain, a small figure huddled near the sidewalk outside a row of quaint shops. Robert would have driven past. He always drove past people, deliberately unseeing, but something made him slow the car. A child no more than 10 years old knelt on the wet concrete, head bowed, lips moving in what appeared to be prayer. The girl wore a thin jacket, soaked through and hanging from her narrow shoulders. Her dark hair, plastered against her pale face, couldn't hide the hollow cheeks and dark circles under her closed eyes. Her hands, clasped tightly before her, trembled either from cold or hunger, or both. "Please," he heard her whisper as he rolled down his window, her voice carrying through the rain. "I haven't eaten in days, just some bread." "Anything." Robert's foot hit the brake so suddenly that the car behind him honked angrily before swerving around. He didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the child's face as she opened her eyes, startled by the sound. In that moment, the world tilted on its axis. The girl's eyes, a distinctive hazel with flecks of gold near the pupils, were identical to Madison's. The shape of her face, the small dimple in her left cheek when her mouth moved, the particular way her eyebrows arched in surprise. Robert felt the air leave his lungs as if he'd been struck. He pulled the car to the curb, ignoring the no parking sign, and stepped out into the rain without grabbing his umbrella. Water soaked through his suit jacket as he approached the child, who watched him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rusty from disuse. The girl hesitated, then shook her head. "I'm hungry," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the sidewalk. "Where are your parents?" Robert asked, crouching down to her level despite the water seeping into his dress pants. "Don't have any," she murmured, then added quickly, "I'm not supposed to be here. Please don't call anyone." Robert should have reached for his phone immediately. Child services, police, someone who would know what to do with an abandoned child. Instead, he found himself asking, "What's your name?" "Anna," she replied, her voice barely audible above the rain. The name hit him like a physical blow. Madison's middle name had been Anna. "When did you last eat, Anna?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. She shrugged thin shoulders. "Really eat? Maybe 3 days ago. I found half a sandwich yesterday." Thunder rumbled overhead, and the girl flinched. Without conscious decision, Robert heard himself say, "I have food at my house. It's not far from here." Anna's eyes narrowed with suspicion, the wariness of a child who had learned not to trust adults. "I don't go to strangers' houses." "That's smart," Robert acknowledged. "We could go to a restaurant instead, but you're soaking wet, and so am I now." He gestured to his drenched suit. "My name is Robert Calloway. I'm an architect. I live about 10 minutes from here." Anna studied him, weighing hunger against danger. Finally, she said, "You don't look like a bad person." "I'm not," Robert assured her, surprised to find he meant it. "I just can't leave you here in the rain." After another moment's hesitation, Anna nodded and stood, her movements stiff from kneeling on the hard concrete. Robert led her to his car, opening the passenger door before realizing she would soak his leather seats. It didn't matter. Nothing had mattered for over 2 years, but suddenly, getting this child out of the rain seemed like the most important task in the world. As they drove in silence, Robert glimpsed Anna from the corner of his eye. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead as raindrops traced paths down her cheeks that looked disturbingly like tears. With each passing moment, the resemblance to Madison grew more pronounced, sending jolts of disbelief through him. By the time they pulled into his driveway, Robert's mind was racing with questions he couldn't articulate. The coincidence was too strange, the similarity too precise. When Anna stepped out of the car and looked up at the imposing Victorian house with wide eyes, Robert felt something shift inside him, the first movement in a heart he'd thought permanently stilled. "This is where you live?" Anna asked, her voice small as they stepped through the ornate front door. Her eyes darted around the foyer, taking in the crystal chandelier, the sweeping staircase, and the gleaming hardwood floors. "Yes," Robert replied, suddenly seeing his home through a child's eyes. The grandeur that had once made him proud now seemed cold and intimidating. "The bathroom is through there if you want to dry off. I'll find you some clean clothes." Anna nodded, following his directions while leaving damp footprints on the polished floor. Robert stood frozen for a moment, water dripping from his suit onto the entryway rug. The cemetery visit forgotten, the sunflowers still in his car. He now faced a reality he hadn't prepared for, a living, breathing child in his mausoleum of a home. He moved mechanically to the linen closet, selecting the smallest towel before hesitating at Madison's bedroom door. He hadn't opened it in months, maintaining his ritual of standing in the doorway, but never crossing the threshold. Now, necessity pushed him forward. The door swung open with a soft creak, revealing the perfectly preserved shrine. Pink walls, white furniture, stuffed animals arranged on the window seat, books alphabetized on shelves. Robert's hands trembled as he opened the dresser drawer, removing a pair of pajamas Madison had outgrown shortly before the accident. The fabric felt cold against his fingers, unused for so long. He added thick socks and a sweater, then quickly retreated, pulling the door closed behind him. When Anna emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel too large for her small frame, Robert handed her the clothes without explanation. "These might fit. I'll make something warm to eat while you change." In the kitchen, he moved with unfamiliar purpose, opening cabinets that hadn't been disturbed in months. He found canned soup, heated it methodically, and toasted bread that he'd nearly forgotten was in the freezer. By the time Anna appeared in the doorway, drowning in Madison's old clothes but significantly drier, Robert had set the dining room table for two, the first time he'd used more than one place setting since the funeral. "Tomato soup and grilled cheese," he said unnecessarily, as Anna climbed onto a chair, her eyes never leaving the steaming bowl. "Go ahead." She didn't need to be told twice. Robert watched as she ate with the focused intensity of someone who hadn't seen a proper meal in too long, restraining herself just enough to avoid seeming completely feral. When she'd finished the soup and was halfway through the sandwich, she finally slowed down enough to speak. "Thank you," she said, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. "This is really good." The simple gratitude struck Robert with unexpected force. "You're welcome," he replied, his own soup untouched. "Anna, why were you alone on the street? Where did you come from?" Anna's posture stiffened. "You said you wouldn't call anyone." "I didn't say that exactly," Robert corrected gently. "But I'm trying to understand." The girl studied him for a long moment, seemingly weighing her options. Finally, she sighed. "I ran away from Greenwood Children's Home. It's a big place with lots of kids no one wants." "An orphanage?" Robert asked, frowning. "In Boston?" "Foster care facility," Anna corrected with the weariness of someone too young to know such terminology. "Been there almost a year this time. Before that it was different places. Never stays good for long." "And your parents?" Anna shrugged, returning to her sandwich. "Mum got sick when I was little. Don't remember her much. Never knew my dad." "I'm sorry," Robert said, meaning it. "How long have you been on your own?" 4 days, she admitted. "I hitched rides, walked a lot. Was trying to get to my friend Jesse's house in Lexington, but I got lost." Robert should have reached for his phone then, should have called the authorities. Instead, he found himself asking, "Would you like more soup?" Anna nodded eagerly, and Robert refilled her bowl, noting how the collar of Madison's sweater slipped off one bony shoulder. The child was severely undernourished, a fact that stirred something protective in him that he'd thought long buried. After her third serving, Anna's eyelids began to droop, exhaustion overtaking hunger. Robert led her to the living room, where she curled up on the leather sofa that had sat unused since he'd taken to eating meals at his desk. He draped a blanket over her, and within minutes her breathing deepened into sleep. In the sudden silence, Robert stood watching her, cataloguing each feature that mirrored his daughter's, the slight upturn of her nose, the curve of her cheekbones, the particular way her fingers curled as she slept. The resemblance was uncanny, impossible, and yet there she was, wearing Madison's clothes, sleeping in Madison's place. He retreated to his study, closing the door quietly before collapsing into his desk chair. His hands shook as he opened his laptop, typing Greenwood Children's Home Boston into the search bar. The facility existed, a large brick building in Dorchester that housed up to 60 children awaiting permanent placement. Robert scrolled through the website, reading about their mission, their needs, their chronic underfunding. He should call them. Now, tonight, before the girl awoke. They would be looking for her, worried perhaps, certainly obligated to report her missing. And yet, his hand hovered over the phone without picking it up. Instead, he opened another browser tab and typed Madison Anna Calloway, his daughter's name, into the search field. The familiar results appeared. Her obituary in the Boston Globe, the community forum posts expressing condolences, the charity foundation established in her name that he'd stopped managing months ago. He clicked on an old photo album, scrolling through images he knew by heart, until he found what he was looking for. Madison at age 10, the age Anna appeared to be. Side by side on the screen, the resemblance would be startling to anyone. To Robert, it was earth-shattering. He closed the laptop and moved to the liquor cabinet, pouring 2 fingers of whiskey he hadn't touched in months. The alcohol burned his throat, a sensation that reminded him he was still capable of feeling. His mind raced through possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. Coincidence, distant relation, some trick of genetics that created doppelgangers among unrelated people, or something else entirely. The clock on the mantel struck midnight, jolting Robert from his thoughts. He hadn't realized how much time had passed. Moving quietly, he returned to the living room to check on Anna. She had kicked off the blanket in her sleep, her face troubled, lips moving in silent distress. Robert carefully replaced the cover, and as the fabric settled over her, Anna's expression relaxed. "Daddy," she murmured in her sleep, the words sending a jolt through Robert's chest. He retreated to the hallway, leaning against the wall as memories assaulted him. Madison calling him Daddy, even after most of her friends had switched to Dad. Madison in these same pajamas, reading by flashlight long after bedtime. Madison asking endless questions about architecture, about how buildings stayed up, about whether he could design her a house in a tree. Sleep was impossible now. Robert returned to his study, reopening the laptop with newfound determination. If there was any connection between this child and his daughter, he would find it. He began searching birth records, adoption databases, anything publicly accessible that might provide answers. Hours passed, the sky outside his window gradually lightening from black to deep blue. Robert's search had yielded little concrete information, but enough inconsistencies to fuel his growing suspicion. The timing of Anna's placement in the system roughly coincided with Madison's accident. The child's background was sparsely documented, with conflicting information about her early years. Most telling of all, the facial recognition software he'd used to compare photographs rated their similarity at 98.7%, well above the threshold for potential siblings, approaching the range for identical twins. By dawn, Robert had formulated a plan that contradicted every rational thought he'd had in the past 2 years. Instead of calling Greenwood, instead of doing what any responsible adult would do, he would keep Anna here for a few days, long enough to conduct a proper investigation, long enough to understand why this child had appeared on this day, with this face in his path. As sunlight crept across the living room floor, Anna stirred, her eyes fluttering open with momentary confusion before focusing on Robert. "You're still here," she said, sounding surprised. "It's my house," Robert replied with a hint of the dry humor that had once been his trademark. Anna sat up, hugging the blanket around her shoulders. "I meant you didn't call them while I was sleeping." Robert hesitated, then shook his head. "Not yet. Are you going to?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither fully understood. Robert should say yes, should explain that she needed proper care, proper placement, proper authorities to handle her situation. "Would you like some breakfast first?" he asked instead. A slow smile spread across Anna's face, revealing another painfully familiar feature, a slight gap between her front teeth that Madison had been scheduled to have corrected the month after the accident. "Yes, please," she said. "I'd like that very much." As Robert moved toward the kitchen, he felt Anna's eyes following him, filled with cautious hope. Something was happening here, something beyond coincidence or imagination. The child on his sofa wasn't Madison. He knew that with absolute certainty, and yet the connection between them seemed to stretch beyond the boundaries of possibility, pulling him toward a truth he couldn't yet comprehend, but was now determined to uncover. The kitchen hadn't seen such activity in years. Robert moved with growing confidence, cracking eggs into a bowl, whisking them with milk and heating a pan that had gathered dust in a cabinet. Anna perched on a stool at the counter, watching his every move with curious eyes. "Do you cook a lot?" she asked, pulling Madison's sweater tighter around her thin frame. Robert paused, spatula in hand. "I used to," he admitted. "Not so much anymore." "Why not?" The simple question pierced his carefully constructed walls. "I haven't had much reason to," he said finally, turning back to the stove. "You live alone?" Anna pressed, accepting the plate of scrambled eggs and toast he slid before her. "Yes." Robert poured himself coffee, black and strong. "Just me." Anna took a bite of eggs, then gestured around the large kitchen. "But this is a family house. It's too big for one person." Robert's grip tightened on his mug. "It wasn't always just me." Understanding dawned in Anna's eyes, too perceptive for her years. "Oh," she said softly. "I'm sorry." "Eat your breakfast," Robert replied, unable to continue the conversation. To his relief, Anna complied, focusing on her food with the same intensity as the night before. When she finished, she carried her plate to the sink without being asked, another echo of Madison that sent a pang through his chest. "What happens now?" Anna asked, turning to face him with damp hands. "Are you going to call them?" Robert had spent the sleepless night considering this question. The responsible answer remained unchanged. Yes, he should contact the authorities immediately, yet the words that came out were entirely different. "Not today," he said, surprising himself as much as her. I think you could use a day to rest, and I'd like to understand more about your situation before making any decisions." Relief flooded Anna's features. "Really? I can stay?" "For now," Robert cautioned. "But we need to establish some ground rules. First, no leaving the house without telling me. Second, if anyone comes to the door, you stay out of sight until I say it's okay. Third," he hesitated, then continued, "I need you to be honest with me, Anna, about everything." The girl nodded solemnly. "I can do that. I promise." Robert wasn't sure what prompted his next question, perhaps the way she'd accepted his terms without argument, or perhaps the growing certainty that there was more to her appearance than mere coincidence. "Anna, do you know your birth date?" She nodded. "January 17th, 2015, at least that's what my paperwork says." Robert felt the room tilt slightly. Madison had been born on January 17th, 2015. "And your full name?" he asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "Anna Elizabeth Wilson. But that's not my real name," she added, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "The social workers said I was abandoned with just a first name, so they made up the rest when they put me in the system." Each piece of information reinforced Robert's suspicions. He needed more concrete evidence, but how to obtain it without raising alarms? A DNA test would provide definitive answers, but ordering one would create a paper trail that could alert authorities to Anna's whereabouts. "Would you like to watch TV while I make some calls for work?" Robert asked, needing time to think. "I usually work from home on Fridays." Anna's eyes widened. "You have a TV?" "We only had one at Greenwood, and we had to take turns picking shows." Robert led her to the media room, a space he hadn't used in months. The large, flat screen collected dust, and the remote's batteries were nearly dead, but he managed to find a children's channel showing animated movies. "I'll be in my office if you need anything," he said, leaving her curled on the leather sofa, eyes fixed on the colorful characters dancing across the screen. In his study, Robert closed the door and pulled out his personal cell phone. He scrolled through contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Dr. James Whittaker, his college roommate who now ran a private medical practice in Cambridge. If anyone could perform a discreet DNA test, it would be James. The call connected on the third ring. "Rob? Is that really you?" James's voice carried genuine surprise. "I haven't heard from you since the funeral." "I know. I'm sorry about that." Robert took a deep breath. "I need a favor, James." "A confidential one." "Of course, anything," James replied without hesitation. "Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," Robert admitted. "I need a DNA test. 2, actually. A comparison between 2 samples, off the record." A pause. "That's not a typical request, Rob. What's going on?" "I can't explain over the phone, but it's important and it needs to be kept quiet." Another pause, longer this time. "This isn't anything illegal, is it?" "No," Robert assured him quickly. "It's personal, very personal." "All right," James finally agreed. "I can help, but you'll need to bring the samples to my office. I have a late clinic today, so the staff will be gone by 6. Come to the back entrance then." "Thank you," Robert said, relief evident in his voice. "One more thing. Do you still have that contact at the Vital Records office? The one who helped with Madison's birth certificate issue?" "Linda?" "Yes, we still play tennis every Sunday. Why?" "I might need her help too. I'll explain everything tonight." After ending the call, Robert sat back in his chair, mind racing. He needed a sample of Anna's DNA. Easy enough, a hairbrush would suffice, but also a sample of Madison's. His daughter's toothbrush remained in her bathroom, untouched since that final morning. The thought of disturbing it felt like sacrilege, but the need for answers outweighed his reluctance. A soft knock at his study door startled him from his thoughts. "Mr. Calloway?" Anna's voice came through the wood. "I think someone's at the front door." Robert tensed, moving quickly to the hallway where Anna stood with worried eyes. The doorbell rang again, followed by a familiar voice calling through the mail slot. "Rob? It's Jenny from the office. I brought those files you needed for the weekend." "My assistant," Robert explained to Anna in a whisper. "Go upstairs, second door on the right. Wait there until I come get you." Anna nodded and disappeared up the staircase with the silent efficiency of a child accustomed to making herself scarce. Robert waited until she was out of sight before opening the front door. Jenny stood on the porch, a folder in her hands and concern etched on her face. "I was getting worried," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation, a liberty she'd taken since the days following Madison's funeral, when Robert had retreated into himself. "You didn't answer any emails this morning, and you missed the Westfield call." "I'm taking a personal day," Robert replied, accepting the folder mechanically. Jenny's eyes narrowed. "A personal day? You haven't taken one of those since—" She stopped abruptly, glancing toward the living room where evidence of Anna's presence was clear. The rumpled blanket on the sofa, a child-sized water glass on the coffee table, the TV audibly playing cartoons in the next room. "Do you have company?" she asked, confusion evident. "Something like that," Robert hedged. "Thank you for bringing these. I'll review them this weekend." Jenny didn't move toward the door. Instead, she studied his face with growing curiosity. "You look different today." "Different how?" "I don't know. Present? You've been on autopilot for so long, and today you seem— here." She gestured vaguely toward the living room. "Does it have something to do with your visitor?" "Jenny," Robert said firmly, "I appreciate your concern, but it's complicated, and I'd prefer not to discuss it right now." His assistant nodded slowly. "Okay, but remember, I'm here if you need anything." "We all are." She moved toward the door, then paused. "It's good to see you back in the land of the living, Rob. Whatever's causing it." After she left, Robert stood in the foyer, her words echoing in his mind. Back in the land of the living. Was that what was happening? This strange awakening, this sudden alertness to the world around him after years of deliberate numbness. "Is she gone?" Anna's whisper carried down the staircase. "Yes, it's safe to come down," Robert called back, tucking the work folder under his arm without interest. Anna descended the stairs carefully, one hand trailing along the banister. "I went into a bedroom," she said. "It's really pretty. All pink and white." Robert felt his throat tighten. "That was my daughter's room." "You have a daughter?" Anna asked, reaching the bottom step. "Had?" Robert corrected, the word like gravel in his mouth. "Her name was Madison." Anna's expression softened with empathy beyond her years. "What happened to her?" Robert had avoided speaking about the accident for so long that the words felt foreign on his tongue. She was in a car 2 years ago yesterday. She didn't—" He couldn't finish. "I understand," Anna said quietly. And somehow Robert believed she did. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken grief filling the space between them. Then Anna asked, "Was that her room I was in, with all the stuffed animals?" Robert nodded. "I'm sorry I went in there. I didn't know." "It's okay," Robert said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Madison would have liked you." The words came unbidden, but as soon as he spoke them, Robert knew they were true. Madison, with her boundless empathy and instant friendships, would have immediately taken Anna under her wing, shared her toys, taught her the secret passages of the old Victorian house. "How old was she?" Anna asked. 10, Robert replied. "The same age as you." Anna's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't comment on the coincidence. Instead, she said, "I'm hungry again. Is that okay?" The simple request broke the moment's heaviness. "Of course it's okay," Robert said, moving toward the kitchen with Anna following. "Let's see what we can find for lunch." As he assembled sandwiches and sliced apples, foods he hadn't prepared in years, Robert found himself telling Anna about his work as an architect, explaining the difference between Victorian and Craftsman styles, describing the library he was currently designing in downtown Boston. Anna listened with genuine interest, asking smart questions that reminded him painfully of Madison's curiosity. After lunch, Robert made a decision. "I need to go out for a while this evening," he told Anna. "An appointment I can't miss. Will you be okay here alone for a couple of hours?" Anna's expression clouded. "You're not taking me back to Greenwood?" "No," Robert assured her. "I promised you could stay today, remember? I just need to see a friend." "I'll be okay," Anna said, relaxing. "I know how to be alone." The statement, delivered with such matter-of-fact acceptance, pierced Robert's heart. This child had learned self-reliance out of necessity, not choice. "You can watch more TV if you want," he offered, "or read any books you find interesting." Madison had quite a collection. Anna's face brightened. "I love reading. At Greenwood, I read every book in the common room twice." "Then you're welcome to explore the bookshelves," Robert said, watching as Anna's face transformed with genuine excitement. In that moment, observing the child who both was and wasn't his daughter, Robert made a silent vow. Whatever the DNA test revealed tonight, whatever complicated truth lay behind Anna's appearance in his life, he would not abandon her to the system again. The vow terrified him, even as it settled into his bones with the weight of absolute certainty. For the first time in over 2 years, Robert Calloway had found something more important than his grief. The back entrance to Cambridge Medical Associates was exactly as James had described, a nondescript door beside the loading dock, accessible only by a service alley that ran behind the row of brick buildings. Robert parked his car out of sight from the main street and checked his watch. 5:55 p.m. Perfect timing. In his pocket he carried 2 sealed plastic bags, one containing strands of Anna's dark hair, carefully collected from the brush he'd offered her after lunch, the other holding Madison's toothbrush, removed from its holder with trembling hands. The act had felt like the first real disturbance of her shrine, the first acknowledgement that life might continue beyond the carefully preserved tableau of her final days. Before leaving the house, he'd settled Anna in the library with a stack of books and a plate of snacks within easy reach. She'd promised to stay inside, away from windows, and not to answer the door or phone. The trust he was placing in a 10-year-old stranger struck him as both reckless and inevitable. The metal door swung open before Robert could knock, revealing James Whittaker in wrinkled scrubs, his salt-and-pepper beard neatly trimmed, but his eyes tired behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You look like hell," James said by way of greeting, ushering Robert inside. "Thanks. You're as tactful as ever." James led him through the darkened hallways of the medical building, past silent examination rooms and empty nurses' stations, to his private office at the end of the corridor. The space reflected its owner, organized chaos with medical journals stacked precariously on every surface, family photos crowding the desk, and a half-eaten sandwich abandoned beside a computer, still displaying patient charts. "So," James said, closing the door and gesturing for Robert to sit, "are you going to tell me what this is about? Because I've been imagining increasingly bizarre scenarios all day." Robert removed the plastic bags from his pocket and placed them carefully on the desk. "I need to know if these 2 samples share DNA. Specifically, if they could belong to biological siblings." James picked up the bags, examining their contents with a professional eye. "Hair and... Is this a child's toothbrush?" His gaze sharpened. "Rob, whose samples are these?" "The toothbrush was Madison's," Robert said quietly. James set the bag down as if it had burned him. "Madison's? Rob, what's going on?" Robert took a deep breath and began to explain. The anniversary visit to the cemetery, finding Anna kneeling in the rain, the uncanny resemblance, the shared birth date, the mounting coincidences that couldn't be dismissed. "I know how it sounds," he concluded, meeting his friend's increasingly skeptical expression. "But you haven't seen her, James. The similarity is beyond explanation." "There are explanations for everything, Rob," James said gently. "Grief can play tricks on the mind. You've been isolated for so long, and yesterday was an emotional anniversary. It's natural that you might project." "I'm not projecting," Robert interrupted. "Run the test, please." James sighed, rubbing his beard thoughtfully. "Even if I do, a standard paternity or sibling test takes days. We'd need to send it to the lab. You have equipment here for preliminary screening, don't you? Something that could at least tell us if we're completely off base." "We have a basic PCR setup for rapid infectious disease testing," James admitted. "It's not designed for relationship testing, but I suppose I could run a crude comparison of genetic markers. It won't be conclusive, but it might indicate if further testing is warranted." "That's all I'm asking for," Robert said. "Just enough to know if I'm losing my mind." James studied his friend's face, then nodded. "Wait here. This will take at least an hour." Left alone in the office, Robert paced restlessly before settling into an examination of the family photos on James's desk. The Whittakers smiled back at him. James, his wife Sarah, their teenage twins now heading to college. A life that had continued while Robert's had frozen in place. His phone buzzed with a text from Anna. "The house made a weird noise, but it's just the pipes like you said. I'm fine." He smiled despite himself, texting back a reassurance before returning to his anxious wait. When James finally returned, his expression was unreadable. He carried a tablet displaying complex graphs and data points that meant nothing to Robert. "I ran the basic markers twice," James said, settling heavily into his chair. "Rob, these samples show significant genetic similarities. The markers I could test, indicate a potential first-degree relationship. Robert's heart pounded in his ears. Meaning? Meaning there's enough similarity that these individuals could be siblings. Close siblings, possibly twins based on the level of matching alleles. James set the tablet down carefully. But Rob, this is preliminary at best. It's not court-admissible evidence. I don't need court evidence, Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just needed to know I wasn't imagining things. There's one more thing, James added, his expression troubled. I called Linda at Vital Records while the test was running. Asked her to do a discreet search for any records matching the parameters you gave me. Female child, born January 17th, 2015, possibly related to Madison. And she found something interesting. There was a birth registration for twins that day at Boston Memorial. The mother listed was Catherine Wilson, a name I don't recognize. Neither do I, Robert admitted, frowning. The father was listed as unknown, James continued. One baby was named Madison Anna. The other was simply Baby Girl Wilson. No first name recorded. Robert felt the room tilt slightly. That doesn't make sense. Madison's mother was Caroline, my wife. James nodded slowly. That's what the official birth certificate shows. But Linda found an initial registration that was amended. The record was sealed afterward, which is unusual. Amended how? The original birth record for Madison listed Catherine Wilson as the mother. It was changed 2 weeks later to Caroline Calloway, with supporting adoption paperwork. Robert shook his head, struggling to process this information. That's impossible. Caroline was pregnant. I saw the ultrasounds, went to the appointments. She was Madison's mother. Medical records can be manipulated, Rob, especially by someone with resources and motivation. James leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Is it possible Caroline wasn't able to conceive? That you pursued alternative arrangements? No, Robert insisted. We tried for years, yes, but eventually Caroline got pregnant naturally. It was a miracle. Even as he spoke, doubt began to creep in. Caroline's sudden pregnancy after years of fertility treatments, her insistence on changing doctors midway through, the way she'd been secretive about certain appointments. Who is Catherine Wilson? Robert asked, his voice hollow. I don't know, James replied, but Linda is looking into it further, discreetly. Robert stood abruptly, needing movement. If what you're suggesting is true, if Madison wasn't Caroline's biological child, then Anna could be her twin, her biological sister. The implication sent his mind reeling. But why would Caroline lie? Why would she separate twins? It doesn't make sense. People make complicated choices, Rob, James said carefully. Sometimes to protect the ones they love. I need to know more, Robert insisted. Can Linda get access to the original adoption paperwork? Maybe there's something there that explains all this. She's trying, but those records are sealed for a reason. It might take time. James stood, placing a hand on Robert's shoulder. In the meantime, what are you planning to do about the girl? Anna? Robert hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. I don't know. I can't just turn her over to the system now, not if she's... He couldn't complete the sentence. Rob, harboring a runaway child is a serious offense, regardless of potential biological connections. If she's in the foster system, people are looking for her. Just give me a few days, Robert pleaded, until Linda can find more information. Then I'll make a decision. James sighed heavily. I can give you 3 days. That's how long I can reasonably sit on this information before my professional ethics force my hand. After that, you need to contact the authorities one way or another. 3 days, Robert agreed, and thank you. On the drive home, Robert's mind churned with possibilities. If Anna was indeed Madison's twin, separated at birth, what did that mean? Why would Caroline have participated in such deception? And more importantly, what responsibility did Robert now bear toward this child who might be his daughter's biological sister, or perhaps something more? The house was quiet when he returned, but a lamp burned in the library. He found Anna curled in an armchair, fast asleep with an open copy of A Wrinkle in Time across her lap, Madison's favorite book, dog-eared from countless readings. Robert stood watching her for a long moment, this child who had appeared like an apparition on the anniversary of his deepest loss. Whether by cosmic coincidence or design, Anna had entered his life at the precise moment when grief threatened to consume him entirely. Now, she offered both mystery and purpose, a reason to emerge from the fog that had enveloped him for 2 years. Carefully, he lifted the book from her lap, marking her place before setting it aside. The movement caused Anna to stir, her eyes fluttering open with momentary confusion. "You came back," she murmured sleepily. "Of course I did," Robert replied, surprised by how natural the words felt. "This is my home. Am I staying tonight?" Anna asked, more alert now, sitting up in the chair. Robert nodded. "You can sleep in the guest room. It's more comfortable than the couch." "Not Madison's room?" There was no challenge in the question, just simple curiosity. "No," Robert said gently. "Not Madison's room." Anna accepted this without comment, following him upstairs to the blue bedroom at the end of the hall, furthest from Madison's pink sanctuary. As she settled under the covers, Robert found himself engaged in the forgotten ritual of tucking in a child, straightening the blanket, ensuring water was within reach, asking if she needed anything else before sleep. "Mr. Calloway?" Anna's voice was small in the dimly lit room. "I've been thinking about Madison all day." Robert tensed. "You have?" Anna nodded, her eyes serious in the lamplight. "I feel like I know her from her books and her room and the pictures everywhere. It's weird, but—" She hesitated, then continued, "Sometimes I feel like I've been here before. Is that crazy?" A chill ran down Robert's spine. "No," he said carefully. "It's not crazy. Sometimes places can feel familiar even when they're new to us. It's not just the place," Anna insisted. "It's you, too. Like I've known you before." She yawned widely, the lateness of the hour catching up with her. "Sorry, that sounds stupid." "It doesn't sound stupid at all," Robert assured her, his mind racing with implications he wasn't ready to voice. "Get some sleep, Anna. We can talk more tomorrow." As he turned to leave, Anna's drowsy voice followed him. "My favorite color is yellow, same as Madison's." "I saw her yellow backpack in her room." Robert paused in the doorway, not turning around. "How did you know it was her favorite color?" "I just knew," Anna murmured, already drifting towards sleep. "Like I know you drink your coffee black, and you tap your fingers when you're thinking hard, and you hate when people leave cabinet doors open." All true. All habits Madison had known and commented on. All things Anna couldn't possibly have observed in the short time she'd been in his home. "Good night, Anna," Robert said softly, closing the door with a hand that wasn't quite steady. In his own bedroom, Robert sat on the edge of the mattress, mind reeling from the day's revelations. The DNA test suggested a biological connection. The birth records hinted at a deception orchestrated by Caroline and perpetuated for a decade. And now Anna displayed knowledge she couldn't possibly possess, unless some bond existed between her and Madison that transcended conventional understanding. Science and mysticism collided in his thoughts as exhaustion finally claimed him. His last conscious thought before sleep was a question that would haunt his dreams. If Anna was Madison's twin, separated at birth, what else might they have shared beyond genetics? What connections might persist even after one twin had departed this world? Morning light filtered through the guest room curtains, painting golden rectangles across Anna's sleeping form. Robert stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. In sleep, with her dark hair fanned across the pillow and her features relaxed, the resemblance to Madison was even more pronounced, painful in its perfection yet somehow comforting. Yesterday's revelations had kept him awake for hours. If James's preliminary tests and Linda's documents were correct, then the foundations of Robert's understanding of his family had been built on carefully constructed lies. Caroline, his wife of 15 years before her departure 6 years ago, had orchestrated an elaborate deception, presenting another woman's child, perhaps children, as her own. The question that burned brightest in his mind: why? Why separate twins? Why maintain the fiction even after their divorce? And most crucially, did Caroline know that Madison had a twin sister relegated to the foster care system? Anna stirred, her eyes opening to find Robert watching her. Instead of being startled, she smiled sleepily. "Morning?" "Good morning," he replied, stepping into the room. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than at Greenwood," she said, sitting up and pushing hair from her face. "No snoring roommates." Robert set a glass of orange juice on the nightstand. "I thought we might go shopping today. You need clothes that fit properly." Anna's eyes widened. "Really? My own clothes?" "Of course. Now we can't have you wearing Madison's old things forever." The words came naturally, as if he'd already decided Anna would stay beyond these tentative first days. Perhaps he had. An hour later, showered and dressed, Anna still in Madison's too large jeans and sweater, They sat at the kitchen island eating breakfast when Robert's phone rang. James's name flashed on the screen. "I need to take this," he told Anna, stepping into the hallway. "Hello? Rob, it's me." James's voice was tight with urgency. "Linda found something you need to see. How soon can you get to my office?" "I'm not alone," Robert reminded him, lowering his voice. "I have Anna with me." A pause. "Bring her." "After what Linda uncovered, I think it's best if we all talk together." Alarm flared in Robert's chest. "What did she find?" "Not over the phone. Just come as soon as you can. Use the main entrance this time. I've arranged a private consultation room." The drive to Cambridge was tense, with Anna sensing Robert's unease, despite his attempts to mask it. She sat quietly in the passenger seat, fingers fidgeting with the hem of her borrowed sweater. "Who are we going to see?" she finally asked as they crossed the Charles River. "A friend of mine. A doctor," Robert answered carefully. "He might have some information about your background." Anna's posture stiffened. "You mean about Greenwood? Are you turning me in?" "No," Robert assured her quickly. "This isn't about returning you to the group home. It's about understanding how you came to be there in the first place." This answer seemed to satisfy her, though confusion remained evident in her furrowed brow. When they arrived at the medical building, Anna followed Robert closely, her hand occasionally brushing against his as if seeking reassurance. The receptionist directed them to a small conference room at the end of a quiet hallway, where James waited with a woman Robert recognized as Linda Chen from the Vital Records office. Both adults fell silent when Anna entered behind Robert. "This is Anna," Robert said simply, noting the way both James and Linda studied the girl's face with poorly concealed fascination. "Hello, Anna," James said warmly, professional demeanor taking over. "I'm Dr. Whitaker, an old friend of Mr. Calloway's, and this is Ms. Chen." Anna nodded politely but remained half-hidden behind Robert, suddenly shy in the presence of strangers. "Anna," Robert said gently, "would you mind waiting in that room next door for a few minutes? There's a TV and some magazines. Dr. Whitaker and I need to talk privately first." Though clearly reluctant, Anna complied, allowing a nurse to guide her to the adjacent waiting area. Once the door closed behind her, Robert turned to James and Linda with barely contained impatience. "What did you find?" Linda opened a folder on the table. "I started by tracking Catherine Wilson, the birth mother listed on the original certificate. She was 22 when the twins were born, working as a housekeeper for a service that catered to wealthy Boston families. Including mine," Robert said, the pieces starting to align. Linda nodded. "According to employment records, she worked at your Beacon Hill residence for approximately 6 months in 2014 during your wife's alleged pregnancy." "Caroline wasn't pregnant," Robert said flatly. "That's what you're telling me." "The medical records I found suggest she had a hysterectomy 3 years earlier, following complications from endometriosis," James interjected. "She couldn't have been pregnant, Rob." The revelation struck Robert like a physical blow. "That's impossible. We tried fertility treatments for years, but she told me we succeeded naturally in the end. I saw her body change. I felt Madison kick." James and Linda exchanged glances. "What you saw was an elaborate performance," Linda said gently. "Catherine Wilson was the pregnant one. From what we've pieced together, your wife hired her, kept her hidden in your home during the later stages, and then claimed the child as her own." "Children," Robert corrected. "Twins." "Yes, but here's where it gets more complicated," Linda continued, sliding a document across the table. "This is the original birth record, showing twins born to Catherine Wilson. But this," she produced another document, "is a private adoption agreement signed by Catherine surrendering all parental rights to one child, identified only as Baby A." "Madison," Robert murmured. "Presumably," Linda agreed, "but there's no corresponding document for Baby B. No formal adoption, no legal transfer of parental rights." Robert's mind raced to keep up. "So what happened to the second baby? To Anna?" "According to what I could find, Catherine Wilson kept the second child initially. She moved to Springfield with an infant daughter, used her earnings from the arrangement with your wife to rent an apartment. She worked various jobs for about 5 years. And then?" Linda's expression softened with sympathy. "She became ill. Cancer, aggressive and fast-moving. Hospital records show she was admitted to Bay State Medical Center in 2020, with her daughter, Anna, listed as next of kin, though the child was only 5 at the time." "What happened after Catherine's illness?" Robert asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Anna entered the foster system. No father was listed on her birth certificate, and no other relatives came forward. She's been in 4 different placements since then, with the last year spent at Greenwood Children's Home. Robert sat back, absorbing the implications. So, Caroline arranged to adopt one twin, presented her as our biological child, and left the other with the birth mother. It appears so, Linda confirmed. But why? Robert demanded, anger finally breaking through his shock. Why separate twins? Why the elaborate deception? James leaned forward. Rob, I think we need to consider Caroline's state of mind. You know how desperately she wanted a child. After years of fertility treatments, the hysterectomy must have been devastating. Perhaps in her mind, this was the only way to have what she wanted. By lying to me? By separating sisters at birth? The agreement Catherine signed included a substantial payment, Linda noted quietly. Nearly $500,000, plus medical expenses. For a young woman with limited opportunities, it might have seemed like her best option. Robert shook his head, struggling to reconcile this new reality with the life he thought he'd lived. Did Catherine know what happened to the other baby? Did she know her daughters were being raised separately? The confidentiality clause in the agreement was extremely strict, Linda replied. Catherine was legally prohibited from seeking information about the adopted child, but she named her daughter Anna, Robert pointed out. Madison's middle name was Anna. That can't be coincidence. Perhaps it was her way of maintaining some connection between the twins, James suggested. A small rebellion against the separation. Robert stood abruptly, pacing the small conference room. I need to see Anna, the real Anna, my Anna. The possessive pronoun slipped out unintentionally, but he didn't correct himself. Before you do, James said carefully, there's one more thing you should know. We ran a more comprehensive DNA comparison overnight, using the samples you provided. Robert stopped pacing. And? The genetic markers don't just suggest that Madison and Anna were siblings, James said, meeting Robert's gaze directly. The level of genetic similarity, combined with their identical birth date, confirms they were monozygotic twins. Identical twins, Rob. They shared the exact same DNA. Which means, James continued with deliberate precision, that if we were to compare your DNA with Anna's, I believe we would find a paternal match. The room seemed to tilt beneath Robert's feet. That's not possible. I never met Catherine Wilson. He stopped as a memory surfaced. A Christmas party at his home in 2014, Caroline insisting on serving signature cocktails she'd made herself, his unusual grogginess afterward, waking the next morning with strange gaps in his memory that Caroline attributed to overindulgence. Oh my God, he whispered. Caroline drugged me. We can't know that for certain, James cautioned. No, it fits. She was desperate for a child. My child specifically. Our marriage was already strained. She must have... Robert couldn't complete the thought, the violation too profound to articulate. Linda closed the folder gently. Mr. Calloway, regardless of how it happened, the DNA evidence suggests Anna is biologically your daughter. Given that her mother has passed away and she has no other legal guardian, you would have a strong claim to custody if you chose to pursue it. Robert sank back into his chair, the full weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. I've spent 2 years grieving Madison, never knowing she had a sister. A twin sister who's been bounced between foster homes, who's been alone and afraid while I've been wallowing in my own pain. Self-recrimination burned in his chest. How do I even begin to make that right? By being there for her now, James said simply. Robert nodded, resolve crystallizing. I want to tell her. She deserves to know the truth about Madison, about being twins, about being my daughter. Are you sure that's wise? Linda asked. It's a lot for a child to process all at once. She's already processing it in her own way, Robert replied, thinking of Anna's comments about feeling familiar with him and the house. She senses the connection, even if she doesn't understand it. I won't lie to her the way Caroline lied to all of us. James studied his friend's face, then nodded. I'll bring her in. When Anna entered the conference room moments later, she immediately sensed the charged atmosphere. Her eyes darted between the adults, settling finally on Robert with a question in their depths. Am I in trouble? She asked in a small voice. No, sweetheart, Robert assured her, the endearment coming naturally. But there's something important I need to tell you. Something about you and about Madison and about me. Anna perched on the edge of a chair, hands folded tightly in her lap. Are you sending me back to Greenwood? No, Robert said firmly. In fact, if you're willing, I'd like you to come live with me. Permanently? Anna's eyes widened. Like adoption. Exactly like adoption, Robert confirmed. But there's more to it than that. Anna, have you ever wondered about your birth parents? About your family? She nodded slowly. My mom, Catherine, she told me my dad was someone special who couldn't be with us. She said I had his eyes. Anna's hand moved unconsciously to her face. After she got sick, I asked the social workers to find him, but they said his name wasn't on my birth certificate. Robert took a deep breath. Anna, I believe I'm your biological father. The words hung in the air between them, momentous in their simplicity. Anna stared at him, disbelief warring with hope in her expression. That's impossible, she whispered. How could you be my dad and not know it? It's complicated, Robert admitted, but Dr. Whitaker ran some tests using your hair and something of Madison's. The results show that you and Madison were identical twins, sisters with the exact same DNA. Anna's breath caught audibly. Madison was my sister. My twin sister? Robert nodded, watching emotions cascade across her face. Shock, confusion, wonder, loss. But how? Why weren't we together? Why didn't you have both of us? The questions tumbled out, gaining momentum as the implications dawned on her. I didn't know about you, Robert said, moving to kneel before her chair, taking her small hands in his. I didn't know Madison was a twin. My wife kept that secret from me. She arranged to adopt Madison but left you with your birth mother. Tears welled in Anna's eyes. So nobody wanted me. Not even my real mum. No, sweetheart, that's not it at all, Robert insisted, his own voice thick with emotion. Your birth mother wanted you very much. She kept you, raised you for years until she became ill. And if I had known about you, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you. Anna's tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. I used to dream about having a sister, someone who looked just like me. Sometimes I'd pretend she was out there somewhere, looking for me too. She wiped her face with her sleeve. And now you're telling me she was real, but she's gone? Madison is gone, Robert confirmed gently. But I'm here, and I want very much to be your father, Anna. Not just your adoptive father, but your real father, if you'll have me. Anna studied his face with an intensity that seemed to peer into his soul. Is that why I feel like I know you? Like I've been to your house before? Maybe, Robert said. Identical twins sometimes share connections that science can't fully explain. Maybe part of you remembers what Madison knew. For a long moment, Anna sat silently processing this information, her young mind grappling with revelations that would challenge even an adult's understanding. Then, with the resilience unique to children, she asked a question that cut to the heart of her most immediate concern. If you're my real dad, and I come to live with you, would I call you Dad? Robert felt something break open inside him. Not the shattering pain of grief, but the expanding warmth of hope. I would like that very much, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Without warning, Anna launched herself forward, thin arms wrapping around his neck in a fierce embrace. Robert held her carefully at first, then more securely, as the reality of the moment washed over him. His daughter returned to him through a series of events too improbable to be mere chance. Over Anna's shoulder, he met James's gaze, saw the moisture in his friend's eyes, the silent acknowledgement that something profound and healing had occurred in this sterile conference room. There will be legal procedures, Linda said softly, reluctant to interrupt the moment but aware of practical necessities. DNA tests that will stand up in court, petitions, hearings. But given the circumstances, I don't anticipate significant obstacles to establishing paternity and gaining legal custody. Robert nodded, still holding Anna close. Whatever it takes. She's my daughter. She belongs with me. Anna pulled back slightly, her tear-stained face suddenly serious. Can I see pictures of Madison? I want to know what my sister looked like. She looked exactly like you, Robert said, brushing a strand of hair from Anna's forehead. But yes, I have albums full of photos. We can look at them together. And can I... Anna hesitated, then continued in a rush. Can I have some of her things? Not everything, just maybe some books or toys she really liked. Of course you can, Robert assured her. Madison would want you to have them. As they left the medical building together, Anna's hand held securely in his, Robert felt the weight of the past 2 years begin to lift. The grief wouldn't vanish. Madison's absence would always be a void in their lives, but Anna's presence filled spaces he'd thought permanently emptied. In the car, as they prepared to drive home, their home now, Anna turned to him with newfound confidence. "I want to change my name," she announced. "If you're going to adopt me and you're my real dad, I want a new name." "What name would you like?" Robert asked, curious about her thoughts. Anna considered for a moment, then said with certainty, "Anna Madison Calloway, so I can always carry my sister with me." Robert felt tears prick his eyes at the simple perfection of her request. "I think that's a beautiful name," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Anna Madison Calloway it will be." As they drove through the streets of Cambridge toward Concord, toward home, Robert glanced at his daughter. How extraordinary to use that word and mean it completely, and saw both his past and his future sitting beside him. In Anna's profile he could see Madison, forever preserved in the genetic miracle of identical twinship, but in Anna's spirit, her resilience, her capacity for joy despite hardship, he saw something uniquely her own, a second chance he never thought possible, a continuation of love he'd believed forever lost. What Caroline had torn asunder through deception, fate had somehow mended through the most unlikely of circumstances. The coincidence, or perhaps divine orchestration, of finding Anna on the anniversary of Madison's passing defied rational explanation. Yet here they were, father and daughter, strangers just days ago, now bound by blood and choice, and a future waiting to unfold before them. The Victorian house on Walden Street stood silhouetted against the evening sky, its ornate gables and wraparound porch appearing less imposing than when Anna had first seen them 3 days ago. Now, as Robert's car turned into the driveway, she pressed her face against the window with the wonder of homecoming rather than the wariness of a stranger. "We're home," Robert said, the simple phrase carrying weight for both of them. The word home resonated in Anna's chest. After years of temporary placements and institutional living, the concept seemed fragile, too precious to trust completely. Yet as they walked up the porch steps together, Robert's hand resting lightly on her shoulder, Anna allowed herself to believe it might be real this time. Inside, the house felt different to Robert. Where once he had seen only shrines to the past, he now noticed possibilities. The dining room table where they could share meals, the living room where they might watch movies together, the garden that could bloom again under care and attention. "Are you hungry?" he asked Anna, who stood in the entryway looking simultaneously lost and found. She nodded. "A little. I should go grocery shopping," Robert realized, opening the refrigerator to find it nearly empty. "We don't have much here." "I can help cook," Anna offered. "At Greenwood they taught us kitchen duty. I make good grilled cheese." The simple domesticity of the conversation struck Robert with its normalcy. For 2 years, he had existed in a state of suspended animation, mechanically moving through days without engagement. Now, discussing dinner plans with his newly discovered daughter, he felt anchored to the present moment in a way that had seemed impossible just days ago. They cobbled together a meal from what they could find, pasta with jarred sauce, slightly stale garlic bread revived in the oven, and sat at the dining room table that had gathered dust since Madison's passing. As they ate, Robert outlined the road ahead. "Dr. Whitaker and Ms. Chen are helping with the legal process," he explained. "There will be DNA tests, official ones, and court appearances, but they're confident we can establish paternity and transfer guardianship relatively quickly." "What about Greenwood?" Anna asked, pushing pasta around her plate. "Won't I get in trouble for running away?" "I called the director this afternoon," Robert assured her, explained the situation. "They're relieved you're safe, and under the circumstances they're willing to cooperate with the transition." He'd omitted the more difficult parts of that conversation, the director's initial skepticism, the threat of involving police, the legal maneuvering that had ultimately led to a tentative agreement. "So I can really stay? For good?" The hope in Anna's voice was tempered by the caution of a child who had learned not to expect permanence. "For good," Robert confirmed. "This is your home now, Anna. Forever." After dinner, they moved to the living room, where Robert retrieved a stack of photo albums from a cabinet that had remained locked since the funeral. He sat beside Anna on the sofa, opening the first album to reveal Madison at various ages, an infant swaddled in pink, a toddler taking wobbly steps, a kindergartner with missing front teeth. "She looks like me," Anna whispered, tracing a finger over a photo of Madison at age 7, standing proudly beside a science fair project. "Exactly like me. Identical in every way," Robert agreed, turning pages to show Madison's life unfolding. Birthday parties, ballet recitals, family vacations. In each image, Madison smiled with the confidence of a child who had never questioned her place in the world. Anna studied the photographs with an expression Robert couldn't quite decipher. Not quite envy, not quite longing, but something that contained elements of both. She was happy, Anna observed quietly. She was, Robert confirmed, and she would have loved knowing she had a sister. Madison always wanted siblings. Did she know? Anna asked suddenly. I mean, did she ever feel like part of her was missing? Because sometimes I did. Sometimes I'd dream about another girl who looked just like me, and when I woke up, I'd feel so alone. Robert considered the question carefully. I don't know if Madison had those same feelings, but she did have an imaginary friend when she was very young. She called her Anna, actually. Carolyn and I thought she'd just picked up the name from her own middle name, but now I wonder if she was feeling me, Anna finished, her eyes wide, like how I felt her. The concept should have seemed far-fetched to Robert, the rational architect who believed in structural integrity and measurable dimensions. Yet after everything he'd learned, after finding Anna praying on a street corner on the exact anniversary of Madison's passing, he found himself open to possibilities beyond logical explanation. I think, he said carefully, that the connection between identical twins is something science doesn't fully understand yet. Maybe you and Madison shared something that transcended physical separation. Anna nodded solemnly, accepting this theory with the open-mindedness of childhood. Can we look at more pictures? They spent hours going through albums, Robert sharing stories behind each photograph, answering Anna's endless questions about Madison's life. Though emotional, the process felt cathartic rather than painful, a way of introducing Madison to the sister she never knew she had, and giving Anna glimpses of the childhood that could have been hers. When they finally reached the most recent album, containing photographs from Madison's final year, Robert hesitated. We don't have to look at all of these tonight. I want to, Anna insisted. I want to know everything about her. The last photographs showed Madison 2 years ago, just before the accident, standing on the front porch in a new dress for the first day of 5th grade, laughing at a 4th of July picnic with sparklers in hand, concentrating intently on a complex Lego structure. Her face, Anna's face, full of life and possibility. This was the last picture, Robert said softly, turning to the final page where Madison sat at the piano, fingers poised over the keys, smiling at the camera with exasperated affection for the parent interrupting her practice. Anna touched the photograph gently. She played piano? She was just beginning. She'd been taking lessons for about 6 months. I always wanted to learn, Anna said wistfully. At one foster home they had a keyboard, but nobody knew how to teach me. Robert closed the album carefully. We still have the piano. It's in the music room. I could find you a teacher if you'd like. Anna's eyes lit up. Really? You wouldn't mind? I'd like that very much, Robert said, realizing as he spoke that it was true. The thought of music filling the house again brought not pain, but anticipation. Madison would like it too, I think. Knowing her sister was learning. Later, as Robert tucked Anna into bed in the guest room, soon to be redecorated as her permanent bedroom, she asked the question that had clearly been on her mind throughout the evening. Can I see her room? Madison's room. Robert had anticipated this request, had prepared himself for it. Of course. Tomorrow, if you'd like. Anna nodded, settling against the pillows. Dad, she said, testing the word for the first time. It hung in the air between them, precious and new. Yes, Robert answered, emotion tightening his throat. Thank you for finding me. Oh, Anna, he said, smoothing her hair away from her forehead. I think you found me. After Anna fell asleep, Robert moved through the quiet house with new awareness. For 2 years he had maintained these rooms as a mausoleum, preserving every object in suspended animation. Now, with Anna's arrival, life had begun to seep back in. A child's water glass on the coffee table, a half-read book abandoned on the sofa, small shoes kicked off by the door. He paused outside Madison's room, hand resting on the doorknob. Tomorrow, he would enter this space with Anna, would watch as she discovered the sister she never knew. The thought no longer filled him with dread, but with a bittersweet anticipation. Madison's memory would not be diminished by sharing her possessions with Anna. Rather, her legacy would continue through this unexpected connection. Robert's phone buzzed with a text from James. DNA results official. 99.999% probability of paternity. Congratulations, Dad. Scientific confirmation of what his heart already knew. Robert typed back a simple, thank you, before putting the phone away, too full of emotion for more elaborate response. The week that followed brought brought rapid changes to the Calloway household. With Linda's assistance, Robert filed for emergency custody of Anna, presenting the DNA results and Catherine Wilson's death certificate as evidence of his paternity claim. The judge, moved by the extraordinary circumstances and Anna's obvious comfort with Robert, granted the petition pending final adoption proceedings. Greenwood Children's Home released Anna's few possessions: a small suitcase containing worn clothing, a stuffed rabbit missing one ear, and a photograph of Catherine Wilson holding infant Anna in hospital. Robert stored these items carefully, ensuring Anna understood that her past with her birth mother would be honored and preserved alongside her new life with him. Shopping for Anna's new bedroom furniture became their first father-daughter outing. At the department store, Robert watched Anna navigate the overwhelming array of options with the careful deliberation of a child unaccustomed to choice. "You can pick whatever you like," he encouraged, as she hesitated between a standard bed frame and one shaped like a castle turret. "Even the castle one?" Anna asked skeptically. "It's more expensive." "Even the castle one," Robert confirmed. "This is your home, Anna. Your room should be exactly what you want." By the end of the day, they had selected the castle bed, a matching bookcase, a desk for homework, and a comfortable reading chair. Anna had chosen a color scheme of blue and yellow, like the sky and sun, she explained, deliberately different from Madison's pink and white motif. "I want my own room," she'd said with unexpected wisdom, "but I also want to visit Madison sometimes. Is that okay?" "More than okay," Robert had assured her, recognizing Anna's intuitive understanding that she needed both connection to her twin and establishment of her separate identity. The following day, as promised, Robert opened Madison's bedroom door and stepped aside, allowing Anna to enter first. He watched as she moved slowly through the space, taking in the carefully preserved shrine to her sister's life. "It feels like her," Anna said softly, running her fingers over the spines of books on shelves, examining trophies from soccer tournaments, studying photographs on the walls. "It does," Robert agreed, entering the room fully for the first time in months. The pain he'd anticipated was present but muted, tempered by Anna's presence. Anna paused before Madison's desk, where a half-finished bracelet of colorful threads lay exactly as Madison had left it. Would it be okay if I finished this?" The request, so simple and yet so profound, brought tears to Robert's eyes. "I think Madison would like that very much." As Anna carefully picked up the bracelet, continuing the pattern Madison had begun, Robert felt something shift in the room's atmosphere. Not a diminishment of Madison's presence, but an expansion, as if the space had been waiting for this moment of connection between sisters. The weekend brought another milestone, Anna's first meeting with the wider community. Robert had arranged a small gathering in the backyard, inviting James and his wife Linda and a few trusted colleagues from the architectural firm. He had explained the situation to them in advance, preparing them for the extraordinary resemblance between Anna and the Madison they had known. Despite this preparation, James's wife Sarah gasped audibly when Anna stepped onto the patio, the sunlight highlighting her features in stark relief. "It's remarkable," she whispered to Robert as Anna shyly accepted a plate of food from Linda. "I knew they were identical twins, but seeing her in person—" "I know," Robert said, watching his daughter navigate the social situation with cautious dignity. "Sometimes I still can't believe it myself." "How are you handling it?" Sarah asked, her psychology background evident in the gentle probe. "Finding her must have brought back everything about Madison." Robert considered the question carefully. "It did, but not in the way I expected. Having Anna doesn't erase the loss of Madison, nothing could. But it's as if the story wasn't finished the way I thought it was. There's a new chapter now." As the afternoon progressed, Robert observed Anna gradually relaxing among these adults who accepted her without question or condition. By the time dessert was served, she was sitting cross-legged on the lawn with James's teenage daughter Emily, examining a friendship bracelet technique with focused attention. "She's resilient," Linda noted, joining Robert by the grill. "Children often are more than we give them credit for." "She's had to be," Robert replied, watching as Anna laughed at something Emily said, a full, uninhibited sound he hadn't heard from her before. "But I worry about the adjustment. Finding out she has a father, moving to a new home, learning about Madison. It's a lot for anyone to process, let alone a 10-year-old. Children also have an extraordinary capacity for joy," Linda pointed out. "Look at her now. She's not dwelling on the complications. She's making a bracelet in the sunshine with a new friend." Robert nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in Linda's observation. Where he saw potential trauma and psychological complexity, Anna seemed to find opportunity and connection. Perhaps there was a lesson in that approach. Later that evening, as they sat on the porch swing watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk, Anna leaned against Robert's shoulder and asked, "Are you glad you found me?" The question, coming from nowhere yet somehow at exactly the right moment, caught Robert by surprise. "More than I can possibly express," he answered honestly. "Finding you has been the greatest gift of my life, Anna. Even though I'm not Madison?" The vulnerability in her voice revealed the fear she had carried beneath her brave exterior. "You were never meant to replace Madison," Robert said gently, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "No one could. You're my daughter, Anna. Unique and irreplaceable in your own right." Anna considered this, then nodded against his shoulder. I think maybe Madison helped you find me. Like she knew I was out there alone, and she wanted us to be together." The concept, offered with childlike certainty, resonated with something Robert had felt but been unable to articulate. The timing of Anna's appearance, the prayer on the street corner, the pull he had felt to stop his car rather than drive past, all seeming too deliberate for mere coincidence. "I think you might be right," he said softly, squeezing her shoulder. Madison always did look out for others. As darkness settled over the yard, Robert felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. Not the numbed emptiness he had mistaken for acceptance, but a genuine tranquility born of purpose and connection. Madison was gone, a loss that would always leave its mark on their lives. But Anna was here, a miracle he had never anticipated, offering both continuation and new beginning. Tomorrow would bring more adjustments. Anna's enrollment in the local school, her first therapy session with the child psychologist James had recommended, the ongoing legal process to formalize her place in Robert's life. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of grief alongside moments of joy. But for tonight, sitting on the porch swing with his daughter's head resting trustingly against his shoulder, Robert Calloway allowed himself to believe in second chances, not as replacements for what was lost, but as unexpected gifts that made the journey forward possible. "Look," Anna whispered, pointing to the brightest star appearing in the darkening sky. "The first star. Make a wish." Robert closed his eyes briefly, not wishing for what could never return, but expressing gratitude for what had been unexpectedly restored. When he opened them again, Anna was watching him with Madison's eyes in a face now entirely her own. "What did you wish for?" she asked. "If I tell you, it won't come true," he replied with a smile. Anna considered this with serious contemplation. "I think some wishes are meant to be shared," she decided. "I wished that we could be a family, a real one." "Then your wish is already coming true," Robert told her, his heart full beyond measure, "because that's exactly what we are." 6 months later, the Calloway house on Walden Street had transformed. Where once silence had reigned, now music flowed from the piano room, where Anna practiced scales with diligent concentration. The formerly immaculate kitchen regularly displayed evidence of baking experiments, some more successful than others. Colorful artwork adorned refrigerator doors, hallways and office walls. Life had returned, bringing with it both chaos and harmony. Robert stood in the doorway of what had once been his sanctuary from emotion, his home office, now cheerfully invaded by Anna's presence in the form of a small desk in the corner, where she could do homework while he worked on architectural plans. The arrangement had begun as a temporary solution when Anna had expressed anxiety about being alone in the house, but had evolved into a comfortable routine that benefited them both. "Almost finished?" he asked, watching as Anna's pencil moved across paper, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Another expression identical to Madison's, though Robert had learned to appreciate these similarities without letting grief overwhelm the present moment. "2 more math problems," Anna replied without looking up. "Ms. Collins says I'm catching up really fast." Pride warmed Robert's chest. In the months since Anna had come to live with him, she had worked tirelessly to overcome the educational gaps caused by frequent school changes in the foster system. Her determination, combined with natural intelligence, had impressed teachers and tutors alike. "Take your time," he told her. "I need to finish these elevation drawings anyway." Working side by side had become their norm, a companionable silence broken by occasional questions or observations. Robert had discovered that his creativity, dormant for so long, flourished in the presence of Anna's curious mind. His architectural designs had regained the innovative flair that had once been his trademark. earning approving comments from partners who had grown accustomed to his technically proficient but uninspired work of the past 2 years. Anna closed her math book with a satisfied sigh. Done. Can we work on the treehouse plans now? The treehouse had been Anna's idea, conceived during her exploration of Madison's belongings when she'd discovered a sketch Madison had made of her dream house in the trees. Robert had initially hesitated, fearing the project might be too emotionally charged, but Anna's enthusiasm had won him over. Now the preliminary design occupied a special table in his office, where they added details during evening planning sessions. Let me finish this client drawing first, Robert promised. Another 15 minutes. Anna nodded, turning her attention to a book, her patience another quality that sometimes startled Robert, accustomed as he was to Madison's more impulsive nature. Though identical in appearance, the twins had developed distinct personalities shaped by their vastly different upbringings. Where Madison had been confident and outgoing, Anna was thoughtful and observant. Madison had rushed headlong into new experiences. Anna tested waters carefully before committing. These differences had helped Robert separate the two in his heart, loving Anna for herself, while honoring Madison's memory. The child psychologist had praised his ability to navigate this complex emotional terrain, though Robert knew he still had moments of confusion, still occasionally called Anna by her sister's name in moments of distraction. Dad? Anna's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Can I ask you something important? Robert set down his pencil, recognizing her serious tone. Of course. Tomorrow's the adoption hearing, right? And after that, I'll really officially be Anna Madison Calloway. That's right, Robert confirmed. The judge will sign the papers and it will be legal and permanent. Though you're already my daughter in every way that matters. Anna nodded, twisting a strand of dark hair around her finger, a nervous habit Robert had come to recognize. I was thinking, after it's official, could we visit Mom's grave? Catherine, I mean. I haven't been since before Greenwood, and I think she'd want to know I found you. The request caught Robert by surprise, though it shouldn't have. Anna spoke rarely of Catherine Wilson, but when she did, it was with the complicated love of a child who understood her mother had done the best she could with limited resources and options. Of course we can, Robert said gently. We can drive to Springfield whenever you'd like. And Anna hesitated, then continued in a rush. Could we bring flowers for Madison too? I'd like to tell her about the treehouse we're building. I think she'd like knowing her idea is coming true. Robert's throat tightened with emotion. Anna's desire to connect with both her birth mother and her twin sister reflected the extraordinary maturity with which she had approached her unusual situation. I think that's a wonderful idea, he managed. Madison loved sunflowers. We could bring those. And lilies for Mom, Anna added. Those were her favorite. They finished their work in comfortable silence, the plans for the following day settling between them with both solemnity and anticipation. The adoption hearing would mark the official completion of their family's legal formation, but these cemetery visits represented something equally important, acknowledgement of the complex paths that had brought them together. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October day with leaves turning brilliant shades of red and gold across Concord. Anna appeared for breakfast, wearing the new dress they had chosen together for the occasion, navy blue with a Peter Pan collar, simultaneously dignified and age-appropriate. You look beautiful, Robert told her, straightening the collar gently. Is Aunt Sarah coming to the courthouse too? Anna asked, referring to James's wife who had become a surrogate aunt figure in the month since Anna's arrival. The whole Whitaker family, Robert confirmed. And Linda Chen, and Jenny from my office. They all wanted to be there for your special day. Anna nodded, pleased but not surprised by this show of support. The community that had once rallied around Robert in his grief had reformed around his unexpected joy, embracing Anna with open arms and practical assistance. The courthouse proceedings proved brief but emotional. Judge Eleanor Martinez, known for her no-nonsense approach to family court, actually smiled as she reviewed the final adoption papers. In my 20 years on the bench, she remarked, looking between Robert and Anna, I've rarely seen a case where the rightness of a placement was so evident. Nature and circumstances have brought you together, and the law is simply catching up to what is clearly meant to be. When the gavel fell, officially declaring Anna Madison Calloway the legal daughter of Robert James Calloway, spontaneous applause broke out from the small gathering of supporters. Anna, who had maintained solemn composure throughout the proceedings, finally allowed tears of joy to spill down her cheeks as Robert enfolded her in a tight embrace. "We did it, sweetheart," he whispered against her hair. "It's official now. Forever." The celebration lunch afterward at Anna's favorite restaurant was filled with laughter and gifts: a charm bracelet from the Whitakers, a hand-bound journal from Linda, a framed architectural drawing of their house with both Robert and Anna's names listed as residents from his colleagues at the firm. Through it all, Anna maintained a quiet awareness of the day's second purpose. As the gathering dispersed with final hugs and congratulations, she tugged gently on Robert's sleeve. "Are we still going?" she asked quietly. "To see Mom and Madison?" "Absolutely," Robert assured her. "I've already mapped the route to Springfield." The drive took nearly 2 hours, during which Anna alternated between excited chatter about her new legal status and thoughtful silence, gazing out the window at the Massachusetts countryside sliding past. Robert allowed her this emotional oscillation, understanding the complex mix of joy and grief that colored this significant day. Springfield Cemetery appeared before them, an expanse of rolling green dotted with stones and monuments. At the entrance, they stopped to purchase flowers, sunflowers for Madison as planned, and white lilies for Catherine. "Do you remember where her grave is?" Robert asked gently as they entered the grounds. Anna nodded, pointing with certainty toward a distant section. "Over there by the big oak tree. She has a small stone. The hospital staff took up a collection to pay for it." The simple granite marker bore Catherine Wilson's name, dates, and the inscription, "Beloved Mother." Robert stood back slightly, allowing Anna a private moment as she carefully arranged the lilies against the stone. "Hi, Mum," she said softly, her voice carrying on the autumn breeze. "I found him, my dad, just like you said I would someday." She glanced back at Robert with a sad smile. "He's good, Mom. He takes care of me really well. I have my own room and I'm learning piano and we're building a treehouse." Robert's heart ached as he watched Anna communicate with the mother who had raised her alone for 5 years, who had protected her as best she could until illness had made that impossible. Catherine Wilson, whatever her flaws or motivations in the original arrangement with Caroline, had clearly loved her daughter. "Thank you," Robert whispered toward the grave. His words meant only for Catherine's spirit. "Thank you for keeping her safe until we could find each other." After several minutes of quiet communion, Anna rejoined Robert, slipping her hand into his. "I'm ready to go see Madison now," she said, her voice steady despite the tears drying on her cheeks. The drive back to Concord was quieter, both father and daughter processing the emotional weight of the cemetery visit. When they finally arrived at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery as afternoon shadows lengthened, Anna held the sunflowers tightly, suddenly nervous. "What if she doesn't want me here?" she whispered, as they walked the path toward Madison's grave. "What if she's angry that I'm living in her house using her things?" Robert knelt to meet Anna's eyes, understanding the fear behind her question. "Madison had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known," he assured her. "She would be overjoyed to know her sister is living in her house, continuing her legacy. She would love you, Anna." "I have no doubt about that." Reassured, Anna approached the polished granite headstone that marked Madison's resting place. Unlike at Catherine's grave, she didn't immediately speak, instead arranging the sunflowers with careful precision before settling cross-legged on the grass. "Hi, Madison," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's me, Anna, your sister, your twin. I wish we could have met for real, but Dad says maybe we did know each other in a way even though we were apart." Robert stood at a respectful distance, allowing the sisters this moment of connection across the boundaries that separated them. Anna continued speaking softly, telling Madison about the treehouse plans, her piano lessons, the books she'd discovered in Madison's collection that had become her favorites too. "I finished your friendship bracelet," she said, touching the woven threads she wore around her wrist, Madison's final project completed by her twin's hands. "I wear it every day, so part of you is always with me." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cemetery grounds, Anna finally stood, brushing grass from her dress. "I think she heard me," she told Robert with quiet certainty. "I felt her listening." "I think she did too," Robert agreed, putting an arm around Anna's shoulders as they turned to leave. They were nearly at the cemetery gates when Anna stopped abruptly, her gaze fixed on a slight figure kneeling by a nearby grave. A girl, no more than 10 years old, ragged and thin, hands clasped in what appeared to be prayer. "Dad," Anna whispered, clutching Robert's arm. "Look." Robert followed her gaze, an eerie sense of déjà vu washing over him. The scene was so similar to his first encounter with Anna that for a moment time seemed to fold in on itself, past and present, merging into a single, continuous moment. "She looks hungry," Anna observed, her voice filled with compassion, born of personal experience. "Like I was." Without hesitation, Robert approached the child, Anna at his side. The girl looked up with startled eyes, brown, not hazel like the twins, her features Hispanic rather than European, her circumstances clearly different. Yet the parallel was unmistakable, a child in need, encountered in a cemetery on a significant day. "Are you okay?" Robert asked gently, the same question he had posed to Anna 6 months earlier. The girl shook her head, wariness evident in her posture. "My grandmother," she indicated the fresh grave before her. "She's gone. I don't have anywhere to go now." Anna stepped forward, extending her hand with the natural empathy of a child who understood loss intimately. "I'm Anna, this is my dad, Robert. We can help you find somewhere safe." As the girl hesitantly took Anna's offered hand, Robert felt something shift in the universe. Not coincidence this time, but purpose. The circle that had begun with his encounter with Anna was expanding, allowing them to extend to others the same compassion and connection that had healed their own broken hearts. "What's your name?" he asked the child. "Lucia," she answered softly. "Lucia Morales." "Well, Lucia," Robert said, meeting Anna's eyes with shared understanding, "why don't you come with us? We can get you something to eat while we figure things out." As they walked together toward the cemetery gates, Robert, Anna, and now Lucia, the setting sun cast their shadows long across the grass, 3 figures moving forward into an uncertain but hopeful future. In the car, as Robert called James for advice about emergency foster placement, Anna sat in the back seat with Lucia, sharing the snacks they'd packed for their day trip, offering silent comfort born of personal understanding. Later that night, after social services had arranged temporary emergency placement for Lucia with a local family known to James, with promises to keep Robert and Anna updated on her situation, father and daughter sat on the porch swing in the gentle autumn evening. "Do you think it was just coincidence?" Anna asked, her head resting against Robert's shoulder. "Finding Lucia today, of all days?" Robert considered the question carefully. "I don't believe in coincidence anymore," he said finally. "Not after how we found each other." "I think Madison helped again," Anna decided with childlike certainty. She knew Lucia needed someone who would understand, someone who wouldn't just drive past. "Maybe she did," Robert agreed, no longer questioning the wisdom that sometimes came from his daughter's intuitive connection to the sister she had never known in life. "Dad?" Anna's voice was drowsy, the emotional day catching up with her. "I was thinking, maybe we could help Lucia find her family like I found you. And if she doesn't have one, maybe we could be her family somehow." The suggestion, offered with such simple compassion, filled Robert's heart to overflowing. 6 months ago, he had been a hollow man, existing rather than living. Now, through Anna's presence in his life, he had not only reclaimed his capacity for love, but expanded it, creating space for connections that extended beyond their small family unit. "We'll do everything we can to help her," he promised. "That's what families do. They grow to include the people who need them." As stars appeared in the darkening sky, Robert reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. The tragedy of Madison's passing would always remain a painful chapter in their story. The deception that had separated the twins at birth would always cast shadows across their family narrative. But through Anna, life had found a way to continue to evolve, to create new patterns of connection and meaning. Robert Calloway, once lost in grief's labyrinth, had found his way back to the land of the living through the unexpected gift of his daughter's return. And now together, they were learning that the most powerful response to loss was not to close one's heart, but to open it wider, creating space for new beginnings, even as they honored what had been lost. "I love you, Dad," Anna murmured, drifting towards sleep against his shoulder. "I love you too, sweetheart," Robert replied, his voice steady with the certainty of absolute truth. "More than you'll ever know." Above them, the brightest star in the evening sky seemed to pulse with particular intensity, as if offering confirmation from a distance too vast to measure, yet somehow intimately close. "Madison's star," Anna called it. their guiding light leading them forward one day at a time into a future built not on forgetting but on remembering with love and purpose. The porch swing rocked gently in the evening breeze, carrying father and daughter together into whatever tomorrow might bring, their hearts open to all possibilities, their souls connected to both earth and sky, present and past, in the perfect, imperfect circle of family that had been broken, found and made whole again.